Okay. Okay. Welcome to Boju Bajai. मेरो नाम भ्रिकुटी राई.
मेरो नाम इतिशा गिरी.
र आज चाहिँ हामी स्टुडियोमा छौँ र आई एम भेरी नर्भस बिकज हामी कहिले पनि स्टुडियोमा रेकर्ड गरेर गर्दैनौँ. म युजुअली मेरो सिरक मुनि हुन्छ, सो आज आई एम भेरी नर्भस. एन्ड अल्सो आजको हाम्रो एपिसोड इज गोइङ टु बी अ लिटल डिफरेन्ट बिकज टुडे वी हेभ अ गेस्ट. हामीसँग हुनुहुन्छ लेखिका मुना गुरुङ. ताली पिटो. Hi Muna, welcome to Boju Bajai.
Namaste, hi, thank you.
So,
म पनि नर्भस छु.
किन नर्भस छौ?
खै किन यसो अलिक बोजू बजै भने एकदम मनपर्ने पडकास्ट हो. सन्डे आफू नै यहाँ वान अफ द बोजुज भएर आउँदा चाहिँ अलिकता हुँदो रहेछ नर्भस.
Okay, that makes us feel like we are very like special bojus. Okay.
तर रेडियोको त्यो चाहिँ खतरा के लुगा लाउनु पर्छ भनेर सोच्नु नपर्ने के.
It's very relaxed.
एकदम
टाउकोमा एकदम तेल लगाएर बसिरहेछौँ हामी. It's just that we are in a studio and there is someone besides us, which makes it a little. So we'll just pretend I'm still at my home. Okay, Itisha, what do you have to say? हामी के मुनालाई तिमीले पनि वेलकम गर्छौ त? के भन्छौ?
Yes, so we're very excited to have Muna on Boju Bajai, and so we've been dying to chat to Muna because Muna has been working on this excellent column on Nepali Times, I know, Lightroom Conversations. So Muna is a writer and a translator, and we thought this would be like the perfect time to have her on our podcast because August is Women in Translation Month. So Muna, can you tell us a little bit about like your Women in Translation ko barema?
सो खास मलाई पनि धेरै त त्यस्तो थाहा छैन, तर लास्ट इयर चाहिँ मैले सुनेको थियो कि अगस्त चाहिँ वुमेन इन ट्रान्सलेसन मन्थ भनेर. एन्ड देन I had already sort of missed August, and so I said, oh, next August I'll try to, sort of shed light on it. So then when August came around, I was like, okay, I got to do some research. So खास चाहिँ के रहेछ भने women in translation month भने अगस्त भरि चाहिँ women अनि women चाहिँ अलिक broad नै हुन्छ त्यो definition चाहिँ because it includes like LGBTQ trans folks too and genderqueer folks writers हैन. उहाँहरूले लेख्नु भएको प्लस women उहाँहरूले लेख्नु भएको कृतिहरूलाई चाहिँ ट्रान्सलेट गरेको छ भने त्यो पनि अङ्ग्रेजीमा देन यु सोर्ट अफ सेड लाइट अन इट हैन. ट्रान्सलेटर चाहिँ खास वुमेन नै हुन नपर्दो रहेछ. त्यो जस्ट हुएभर इज राइटिङ क्यान बी वुमेन. बट देन एट द सेम टाइम द कुल पार्ट इज अल्सो वाइ इङ्ग्लिसमा मात्र ट्रान्सलेट गरेर किताबलाई हाइलाइट गर्ने होइन. सो एक्चुअली इट्स नट इभन नेसेसरी द्याट इङ्ग्लिसमा ट्रान्सलेट हुनुपर्छ. इट्स जस्ट इफ यु हाइलाइट एनी बुक द्याट्स रिटन बाई अ वुमन or like LGBTQ genderqueer folk that is not in English, and sort of like push that. And अनि के गर्न सकिन्छ हामी अब त्यो प्रमोट गर्न सकिन्छ. कसैको अगस्तमा बर्थडे छ भने त्यस्तो किताबहरू किनेर दिन सकिन्छ हैन. अनि तपाईँहरू लाइब्रेरीहरू हुनुहुन्छ भने त्यसको अलिक त्यसलाई अलिक अगाडि फोकस गर्न सकिन्छ. बुक स्टोरहरूमा एकदम फिचरहरू गर्न सकिन्छ. अनि अब न्युज पेपरहरूमा चाहिँ बुक रिभ्युजहरू लेख्न सकिन्छ त्यो महिनाभरि. त्यस्तै जस्ट त्यसको बारेमा कुरा गर्ने. मान्छेहरूले धेरै त्यो ट्विटरमा चाहिँ लिस्टहरू बनाइरहनु भएको छ यो किताब पढ्नु यो किताब. इट्स लाइक एन्डलेस क्या. अनि त्यो हेर्दा चाहिँ आफू चाहिँ केही नपढे जस्तो लाग्दो रहेछ.
मलाई पनि त्यही लागिरहेको थियो आज. लाइक वाइल प्रिपेयरिङ फर दिस एपिसोड आई वाज लाइक आई फिल सो अन्डर प्रिपेयर्ड. And then I realized how much I don't read a lot these days. अनि त्यो भन्दा पनि त्यो when you're certainly talking about यस्तो महिनामा एउटा सर्टेन जेन्डरको अथवा एक थरीको राइटर्सहरूको बारेमा पढ्ने भन्दा यु रियलाइज हाम्रो रिडिङ लिस्टमा त त्यो हामी कन्सियसली त्यो डिसिजन नै बनाउँदैन नि त द्याट आइम गोइङ टु रिड ओन्ली अबाउट अब लाइक यसो फिमेल राइटर्स. नेपाली फिमेल राइटर्सको मैले धेरै पढेको छैन होइन. सो अगस्त महिनामा चाहिँ मैले के गरिरहेको थिएँ भने आई जस्ट वान्टेड टु रिड अल्सो बिकज वी वर्किङ अन अ साइमल्टेनियस अनदर एपिसोड अन फ्रेन्डसिप. सो मैले चाहिँ अहिले ट्रान्सलेटेड बुक्सहरू चाहिँ पढिरहेको छु क्या यो महिना चाहिँ. एन्ड मैले मैले चाहिँ एलेना फरान्टेको सेकेन्ड सकाएँ.
Nice.
So I'm on the third book. So by the time this month finishes, I'll be done with all the 4 novels. So, yeah.
So you are reading.
I am reading a
You're
little
just
bit.
being hard on yourself.
Yeah, a little bit. But not as much as I would like to. Just so, especially like if like just going to तिम्रो Lightroom Conversations को बारेमा हैन जस्तो त्यहाँ त फिचर गरेको नि कति लेखिकाहरुको बारेमा मलाई थाहा थिएन. I've not read their work. So यहाँ आउनु अगाडि मैले अलिअलि गुगल चाहिँ गरे हैन. So but then it's अनि मैले तिम्रो त्यो पढेपछि तोया गुरुङको हैन. I actually went to a bookstore and I asked them and they didn't have the books which you mentioned also.
त्यो चाहिँ प्रब्लम्स अब त्यो तिमीले भने नि त्यो किताबहरुको लिस्ट हेर्दाखेरि कति नपढे जस्तो लाग्छ थाहा नै हुँदैन. सो कसले चाहिँ यो लिस्ट बनाउँदै छ हैन कसले चाहिँ बुक रिभ्युजहरु लेख्दै छ हैन त्योमा पनि फरक पर्छ कसले एन्थोलोजिजहरु तयार पार्दै छ अनि कसलाई इन्क्लुड गर्ने. सो इट डेफिनेटली डिपेन्ड्स अन who's in charge of disseminating all that information, you know.
Yeah. But I think your Lightroom Conversations ma ahilesamma feature bhayeko sabai writers haruko I think to access to their books itself is a huge issue. Like I think most of them have mentioned it, and Muna, I think you've also touched on it in the sense ki most of the women writers you've spoken to actually self-publish or हुन्छ नि त्यो rights को problem आउँछ. So if they don't have the rights, then they can't authorize a reprint. Just so I'm doing some research on women writers, and it's so difficult for me to find books. Okay, like I've been trying to find Prema Shako poetry book, and it's been an absolute nightmare right now. So why do you think it's so? I mean, is it the publishing industry, Nepal's publishing industry, that perhaps is not very welcoming or is not very friendly to women's writing? Does the same problem also happen to male writers?
Well, I don't know in what you guys know about publishing यहाँ नेपालमा चाहिँ मेरो चाहिँ एकदम ज्ञान चाहिँ एकदमै सानो थोरै छ हैन. तर हरेक writer that I've talked to for Lightroom Conversation उहाँहरुले चाहिँ धेरै जसरी हुन्छ नि सुनको चुरासुरा बेचेर अनि पब्लिश गर्नुपर्ने के अनि कति प्रति भन्दा 500 देखि 1000 प्रति भने एकदम धेरै 1000 अनि त्यसपछि अनि विमोचन गर्नेले गर्छन् हैन नगर्नेले अब साथीहरुलाई के अरे बाँडेर नट इभन बेचेर बाँडेर सकाउने हो मात्रै भन्नुहुन्छ. त्यो एकजनाले मात्र भन्नु भएन के त्यो it's like a repeated thing that every woman has talked about. Now, I feel like maybe your publication and your kinne silsilama चाहिँ maybe it's not a woman only problem. Maybe in general, हामीले एकदम किताबहरुलाई एकदम महँगो लाग्छ. हाम्रो 100 रुपैयाँको किताब पनि महँगो लाग्छ हैन. अस्ति बिमला तुमखेवाजीको एउटा कविता एउटा संग्रहको विमोचनमा गएको थिएँ अनि म एउटा कस्तो राम्रो हार्ड कभर किताब चाहिँ सांग्रिला बुक्सले निकाल्नु भएको थियो अनि मैले किने 200 रुपैयाँ के हार्ड कभर्ड क्या हैन अनि क्यूट इज अनि मैले वाह कस्तो सस्तो भनेर भने मेरो छेउको अर्को एउटा बहिनी हुनुहुन्थ्यो नि कहाँ सस्तो कस्तो महँगो भने हामी थोरै एउटा डिबेटमा पर्यो के अनि मैले 200 रुपैयाँमा त आजकल के हुन्छ तपाई सोच्नुस् न यसो भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ उहाँले हैन कहाँ 200 रुपैयाँ धेरै भयो यस्तो सो I don't know the answers. त्यो चाहिँ त्यो किन्ने चलन चाहिँ अलिक छैन. त्यो चाहिँ
हामीले अलिकति अगाडि बढिसक्यौं like we already asking a little bit about the Lightroom Conversation. त्यो before we talk more यसबारे अलिकति maybe if you can tell us like like how did this column start and कसरी सुरु भयो किन I don't think we've talked about that.
हुन्छ. So I'll just go a little bit back to मेरो बाल्यकाल. I was born in Singapore हैन अनि सिंगापुरमा चाहिँ मेरो फादर चाहिँ मेरो बुवा चाहिँ सिंगापुरको पुलिस लाउरेमा हुनुहुन्थ्यो नि हामी चाहिँ लिटरली एउटा क्याम्प गोर्खा क्याम्प भन्नेमा बस्थ्यौं हैन अनि धेरै जसो चाहिँ हामी सबैजना मोस्टली लाइक गुरुङ राई लिम्बू तामाङहरु धेरै जस्तो हुन्थ्यो अनि दार्जिलिङबाट धेरै जस्तो हैन अनि मेरो नेपाली अब नेपाली पढ्न नपढ्ने त्यहीको पब्लिक स्कुलहरुमा जाने बरु मलेहरु पढिन्थ्यो अनि नेपाली चाहिँ अलिक आलु नै थियो भनौं न लाइक त्यो शुद्धताको हिसाबले चाहिँ एकदम लाइक नट शुद्ध राइट एन्ड देन माइ पेरेन्ट्स नेभर वेन्ट टु स्कुल सो इन द हाउस वी युज्ड टु स्पीक हाम्रै तरिकाको खतरा नेपाली अनि गुरुङ हैन अनि हिन्दी फिल्महरु हेरिन्थ्यो यही जस्तो शनिबार चाहिँ हिन्दी फिल्म हेरिन्थ्यो अनि बाहिर चाहिँ इंग्लिश र मले पढ्थ्यो के अनि हाम्रै त्यो क्याम्प भित्र चाहिँ हाम्रो आफ्नै तरिकाको नेपाली थियो which was like a mix of Darjeelingi Nepali and like Nepali spoken by Rai, Tamang, Gurung, Khalko Nepali, and also like we say like Ambo, like you know stuff like that people are like, oh, what's that Khalko, or like it's not maybe Kathmandu people don't say that, हैन. अनि अर्को कुरा हामीले फेरि चाइनिज र धेरै जस्तो मलेबाट के भन्छ बरो पनि गर्थ्यो के. अब जस्तै तिम्रो साइकल छ अरे हैन, अनि मलाई तिमीले डबल राइड गरेर लग्यो भने मलाई तोम्पाङ गर्देऊ न भन्थ्यो के. अब तोम्पाङ भने यु हेभ टु अन्डरस्ट्यान्ड द्याट इट मिन्स साइकलमा अगाडि राखेर लाने के हैन. सो अनि or like if you're being like एकदम nosy will say like किन केपो भएको भनेर.
केपो is like कुन भाषा?
Malay. It's like अलिक जान्ने ओभर जान्ने के.
Kepo. Okay, I remember that word.
Wait, is it Malay or Chinese? No, I think it's in Malay. Yeah, it's like kina kepo. So it just I just grew up in त्यस्तो हैन. अनि ढाक लाएर काठमाडौँमा आउँदाखेरि चाहिँ केही थाहा छैन के नेपाली भने in that way.
How old were you when you came?
I was 12. Okay. I celebrated my 12th birthday actually January 3rd मै आएको थिएँ यहाँ. अनि entrance अनि एक महिना नेपालमा एक महिना आउनुभन्दा अगाडि सडनली मेरो पेरेन्ट्स रियलाइज ला हामी नेपाल जाँदैछ, यसलाई त नेपाली स्कुलमा पठाउनु पर्छ, यसलाई त नेपाली आउँदैन भनेर. अनि हाम्रो त्यहाँ क्याम्पभित्र नै भित्र स्कुल भन्ने थियो क्या. लिटरली भित्र द क्याम्प होइन. अनि त्यहाँ गएर कखहरू चाहिँ पढ्न थालेको थिएँ. एन्ड देन नेपालमा आएँ अनि बिचरा मलाई एन्ट्रेन्स एक्जाममा यस्तो नेपाली एक्जाम चाहिँ केही थाहा छैन. आई डोन्ट नो एनिथिङ. सो आई लर्न फ्रम स्क्रच 6th ग्रेडमा क ख ग सेन्टेन्सेसहरू राख्न. अनि बिचरा मेरो एउटा ट्युसन सर हुनुहुन्थ्यो, कस्तो माया लाग्दो, मलाई देखेर त्यस्तो टाउको समात्थ्यो जहिले पनि. तर मैले एसएलसी चाहिँ पास गरेँ नेपाली नेपालीमा लेखेर.
त्यही त oh my god 4 वर्षमा to be able to sit for and then pass.
Yeah, and you used to make me write यस्तो लामो essays. I used to hate 4 बज्ने बित्तिकै उहाँ टक्कै 4 बजे आउनुहुन्थ्यो यस्तो टाइममा है. And I'm like, oh आउनु भयो. Some days I'll be like बिरामी भइदियो पनि हुन्थ्यो उहाँ किन आउनु. And then आउने अनि बिचरा यस्तो टाइम स्पेन्ड गरेर पढाउनु भयो. So anyway मलाई अलिकता गिजाउँथ्यो like you know like ए नेपाली अलिक हाँस उठ्दो छ तिम्रो यस्तो यस्तो. So I never felt welcome in Nepali, and I sort of have been talking about that more publicly now. अनि सो नेपाली भन्ने बित्तिकै मलाई नपढ्ने नाइ भने. सो मैले नेपाली साहित्य एक्चुली पढ्दा पनि पढेन कि. स्कुलमा चाहिँ छन्दका कविताहरू सिकाउँथ्यो, त्यो चाहिँ रमाइलो लाग्थ्यो बिकज गीतहरू गाउने होइन. तर त्यो बाहेक नेपाली लिटरेचर भने त्यस्तो केही थिएन until I was doing my master's in New York. अनि एउटा ट्रान्सलेसन क्लास थियो. अनि ओहो के हो त्यो भने मैले लिएँ होइन. अनि अब केही त ट्रान्सलेट गर्नु पर्यो होइन. अनि ला के गर्ने अब नेपालीमै हेरौँ भनेर यसो नेपाली किताबहरू हेर्न गएँ त्यहाँ. अब जे छ अनि पारिजातको किताबहरू भेटाएँ. क्या गाह्रो, ओ माई गड. एउटा पेज पढ्न मलाई 20 मिनट लाग्ने. यत्रो सानो पेज थियो पनि होइन. अनि So I started translating, and the best part was त्यो क्लासमा चाहिँ कसैलाई पनि नेपाली थाहा थिएन के. अनि त्यो मैले जे भने पनि हुन्थ्यो त्यो क्लास त्यो ट्रान्सलेसन.
मिलेन नि त त्यो क्लास. How would the class work then? No?
होइन because it मिल्छ because the whole idea is इङ्ग्लिसमा राम्रो. It has to make sense in English, you know. So they would help me with the English, but then मैले त्यो किन भन्छु भने I think because the audience didn't know नेपाली in that way, त्यो एकदमै सानो कुरामा मलाई खोट त्यो भेटाएन कि. अनि मलाई अलिकता बढी कन्फिडेन्स भयो जस्तो लाग्यो कि because the audience was just like okay let's see what you're translating. And then त्यो स्टोरी त हुन त इङ्ग्लिसमा त आउनु पर्यो नि त, त्यो ल्याङ्ग्वेज मिल्नु पर्यो. त्यो साइड चाहिँ उनीहरूले क्वेसन गर्थ्यो like wait like why did this happen, I don't understand त्यस्तो कुराहरू होइन. So I think त्यो अडियन्सले चाहिँ मलाई अलिकता प्रोत्साहन चाहिँ दियो. अनि अलिकता बढी त्यहाँ त्यो ट्रान्सलेट गर्दाखेरि अनि रमाइलो पनि लाग्यो कि. देन आई फेल्ट लाइक ओके आई कुड डु दिस. अनि त्यो चाहिँ एउटा इन्टर्नली पनि आयो होइन. अनि पछि गएर मञ्जुश्री थापा हु इज बिलभेड होइन, हु यु अल ग्रु अप रिडिङ हर, मैले उहाँलाई एकदम कोल्ड इमेलमा एकदम हाई मञ्जुश्री भनेर इमेल लेखेको थिएँ. आई वाज लाइक शी इज नेभर गोइङ टु रिप्लाई. तर बिचरा शी रिप्लाइड के बिकज शी इज सो अमेजिङ. आई वाज लाइक आई एम राइटिङ and I need some help with Nepali literature. And then she wrote back, and then a few years later she actually contacted me and said, hey, do you want to translate Sulochana Manandartita's poems? And then so her seeing me, I felt like validated. It's like, hey, मैले पनि गर्न सक्छु कि होइन अनि त्यतिखेर केही अझ पनि त्यति साहित्य पढाएको थिएन अनि उहाँले नै पिक गरिदिनु भयो सुलोचना अनि सुलोचनाको पढ्दा त्यो रातको पोम्सहरू पढ्दा चाहिँ यस्तो सजिलो यस्तो सानो पोम्स यस्तो I felt so invited back into the Nepali language के अनि त्यो धेरै डर भयानक शब्दहरू चलाउनु भएको थिएन उहाँले होइन नि मलाई एकदमै I felt like comfortable अनि त्यहाँदेखि सुरु गरेको and then यो Lightroom Conversation को कुरा चाहिँ अब त्यो एकचोटि त्यो सुलोजीको ट्रान्सलेट गरेँ त्यसपछि उहाँलाई मैले ट्रान्सलेट गरेको 2-3 वर्षपछि बल्ल इन पर्सन भेटेँ चिया खान बोलाएको हामी कफीको लागि भेट्या 3-4 घन्टा बितेर छ क्या 1-2 कप चिया खाँदै 3-4 घन्टा देन आई रियलाइज ओ माई गड मैले त उहाँको यति ट्रान्सलेट गरेँ उहाँको बारेमा त मलाई के थोपा थाहा छैन हुन्छ नि एन्ड I just felt like कति धेरैवटा आँखा खोल्यो के in those 3 hours and I just thought if people could read this how if people could also see her in this way like how amazing would it be and भनेर मैले त्यतिखेर चाहिँ रेकर्डलाई अप्रोच गरेर म यो इन्टरभ्यू गर्छु भने त्यही हाम्रो सेम कन्भर्सेसन and then and then I told Suluji can we have the same conversation again she said okay and then we recorded for 3 hours until gare and so that's sort of how Lightroom Conversation came about.
You meet the writers. I mean, I suppose you don't get to know the writer very much before you interview them. How do you manage to strike up the intimate conversation with someone who's perhaps a stranger to you? Like, how do you manage to get them to talk so openly about such personal stories? Like, I've been very curious about that.
It's a secret. Should I give it away? Yes, please. So I tell them, okay, let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about your childhood. That's my line. That's like where I start. And Flannery O'Connor भन्ने त्यो एउटा एकदम गथिक अमेरिकन राइटरले उहाँले भन्नुभएको थियो कि तपाईले बाल्यकाल survive गर्नुभयो भने चाहिँ she says survive then you can write stories for the rest of your life. And I feel like that our childhoods are rife with so many of those instances that we sort of forget in adulthood हैन. अनि so मैले उहाँलाई त्यो भन्ने बित्तिकै it's like त्यो आफै आउँछ त्यसपछि and then we start talking about the child then I keep asking and I keep guiding it हैन. And then so the process itself is like first I have a long list of writers I've already gathered from just like एकदमै preliminary research हैन. अनि त्यसपछि म उहाँहरुको किताब खोज्न बस्छु अनि खोजेपछि then I start like reading through their works and then I pick one that I'm like oh okay maybe this one's interesting for now हैन. धेरै थाहा हुँदैन just vague उहाँ कहाँबाट के कसो उहाँको कृतिहरु then I read the books available to me and I read them all cover to cover एकदमै बिस्तारो and then so that takes about like half a week to prepare agadi and then I contact them. Oh no, finding their numbers is the hardest. For हाम्रो चाहिँ त्यो तर किताबमा चाहिँ first I thought it was kind of creepy तर हाम्रो त्यो धेरै जस्तो प्रकार त्यो पब्लिश भएको किताब नेपालीमा पछाडी नम्बर र कन्ट्याक्ट हुन्छ के अथरको अनि कसैको चाहिँ हुँदैन. अब जस्तै यो विकको चाहिँ मैले पञ्चकुमारी परियार जीको इन्टरभ्यु गरेको थिएँ उहाँ चाहिँ साझाले पब्लिश गर्नुभयो तर पछाडि चाहिँ नम्बर थिएन so I had to go to Saja. Oh my god, sit in this dusty room बिचरा this guy was going through these folders and I was like oh पाउँदैन होला. He was looking for the contract where they signed and then after 30 minutes he fished it out. I was like yes and then I called her and it worked. So first त्यो टाइम नै लाग्छ कि त चिना हुनुपर्छ धेरै जस्तो. I ask friends and then once I find then I have to explain to them what this is and if they're willing and if they're willing then I go and see them wherever they're comfortable and the first conversation is always like a minimum of 2 hours. Toyajiसँग त 5 घण्टा कुरा गरे.
I love the piece with Toyaji.
It's like I went there at 12 and by the time I left it was like 6 and she had fed me and like so त्यो चाहिँ हुन्छ हैन. अनि त्यसपछि त्यो सबै मैले चाहिँ रेकर्ड गर्छु अनि उहाँहरुलाई भन्छु कि stop me at any time त्यो या रेकर्ड भइराछ तर तपाईलाई यो मेन्सन नगर्नु भनेर गर्दिन भनेर भन्छ अनि त्यो रेकर्डेड पिसलाई मैले अनि ट्रान्सक्राइब गर्छु and usually that's like 20-25 pages long transcribe and then त्यसपछि मैले त्यसलाई like translate/curate गर्छु. I think about okay, के हो त angle? मलाई what part did I find interesting about this person? Because सबै भन्न, you know, you can't say everything. So I pick an angle and then I sort of curate, like I just shed light on that, you know. अनि उहाँहरूले त्यो सबै कुरा चाहिँ भने हुन्छ, तर मैले just मिलाउने, like त्यो chronology मिलाउने. Usually beginning to end नै हुन्छ, तर अलिक कहिले काहीँ अगाडि नै भनिसके हुन्छ something great that I can end with, हैन. So त्यो चाहिँ म मिलाउँछु. And then पछि गएर भिडियो फेरि सेकेन्ड भिजिटमा पोर्ट्रेट भिडियोहरू लिन्छ, त्यहाँ पनि अर्को इन्टरभ्यू हुन्छ. त्यतिखेरिन्जेल चाहिँ आई नो उहाँहरूले के भन्न सक्नुहुन्छ भिडियोमा that might be interesting and not a repetition necessarily. अनि त्यसपछि so it's quite a process actually.
So like कति time, you said you meet them multiple times, so is there like you यति घण्टा usually spend गर्ने to write that piece?
Oh, to write it afterwards?
No. त्यो तिम्रो जुन चाहिँ final product छ नि त्यो आउनको लागि चाहिँ do you have to meet them, or like is there like यति नै भन्यो कसैकोसँग 3 घण्टा 6 घण्टा? So
minimum 2 hours talking, just one-on-one, and then त्यसपछि I it's enough. So the childhood question is the question that I think starts getting them. And then I also I never have like the prepared questions and like what do you have to say to young women writers? I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to like make fun of people who ask that question, but I'm just saying I don't prepare it. I just let it kind of flow like you would water a river, and then just see where it goes, you know, like, because I think the heart of it is like, I'm just thinking I'm sure I connect with you, you're human, I'm sure we connect at some level, so let's just have a conversation. That's basically it. So I'm also sharing with them as much as I can in that situation, you know. So this one-sidedness to like
not like because Muna, we were gonna do like this mock interview with you पहिला, just by asking questions like भनेपछि तपाईको उमेर कति हो मुनाजी, अनि यो लेखाइ पढाइ छोडेर अब बिहा गर्ने सोच्नु भएको छ कि छैन?
We forgot to ask all those questions.
You should have a form. Make me fill out a form.
So all three of us have done translations in one way or the other, you know. Brikuti has published a memoir in translation. Brikuti, please tell us.
Tali. Please tell us.
No, I really want to understand. Please tell us about your book.
Oh my god,
do it.
So त्यो भन्दा अगाडि म पनि बाल्यकालमा जान चाहन्छु.
Yes, please.
मेरो पनि ट्रान्सलेसनको मेरो यात्रा मेरो बाल्यकालबाट सुरु भएको थियो, जहाँ मेरो आमाले मलाई अब यदि कुनै बर्थडे पार्टी अथवा कतै जानु छ भने she was like you work on something. So त्यो कान्तिपुरमा चाहिँ एउटा त्यो कान्तिपुरको बच्चाहरूको सप्लिमेन्ट आउँछ नि कोपिला, त्यसमा चाहिँ पछाडि चाहिँ म सानो छँदा भन्ने आउँथ्यो क्या एउटा कलम, where अब writers or like politicians अथवा यस्तो मान्छेहरूको चाहिँ उहाँको बाल्यकालको बारेमा छोटो 300 word टाइपको सानो एउटा आउँथ्यो. अनि मेरो मम्मी, I don't know what she was thinking, म क्लास 9 हरूतिर पढ्दाखेरि she was like, you know, this is such a nice, you know, I really like this उथ्यो. अनि so she asked for permission त्यहाँबाट, अनि so she was like हामी एउटा compilation निकाल्नु तिनीहरूको, अनि what you do is तिमी नेपाल इङ्ग्लिसमा गर भनेर भन्नुभयो क्या त्यसलाई. अनि obviously म कहीँ त जानु पर्यो भने लाइक मेरो मम्मीको बाहना के अब के गर मलाई कविता पनि लेख्न लाउनु भएको थियो मम्मीले, अनि डिसाइड गर्नुपर्ने, because I was like I have 2 birthday parties in December. She's like write a poem, only then you can go. अनि जबरजस्ती मेरो बहिनीको बारेमा मेरो सानी पुतली बहिनी भनेर 4 हरफ लेखेको थिएँ. Anyway, so that's how it started and we published the book. अनि ठिकै भयो होला, मैले के अब सेल्फ पब्लिश नै गर्नु भएको हो त्यति बेला हैन. अनि अलिअलि ट्रान्सलेसन गर्न थालेको थिएँ. आई वाज कम्फर्टेबल नेपाली इङ्ग्लिस दुईटैमा ठिकै थियो. अनि त्यसपछि चाहिँ म पनि नेपाली टाइम्समै गरेको थिएँ. अनि त्यहाँ हामीले फ्रम द नेपाली प्रेस भनेर एउटा सेक्सन थियो जहाँ चाहिँ हामीले नेपालीकोलाई इङ्ग्लिसमा ट्रान्सलेट गर्नु पर्थ्यो होइन. सो त्यहाँ पनि अलिकति प्र्याक्टिस भयो ट्रान्सलेसनको. एन्ड देन आई लेफ्ट माई जब एन्ड त्यति बेला कुन्द सर वाज लाइक, ओ Brikuti, do you want to do something English he didn't say translation directly. It was like something to do with like, you know, English language something. I was like, kid teaching okay. I was not working, so he was like, अनि त्यति बेला भर्खर हाम्रो रुकमानगढ कटवाल हुनुहुन्छ जो चाहिँ अहिलेसम्मको हाम्रो यो नेपाली आर्मी नेपाली पोलिटिक्स आई थिङ्क सबभन्दा कन्ट्रोभर्सियल फिगर इन सम वे, चिफ अफ आर्मी, बिकज हाम्रो त्यति बेला 2007-8 मा त्यस्तै थियो हाम्रो राजनीति के अरे हाम्रो वातावरण परिवेश त्यस्तै थियो होइन. सो एनिवे रुकमानगढ कटवाल केम विथ दिस बुक उसको अनि त्यसको सबैभन्दा मेन कुरा चाहिँ द हाउ इट अनफोल्डेड उनीहरूको कन्फ्रन्टेसन विथ प्रचण्ड एन्ड देन दि प्रेसिडेन्ट स्टेपिङ इन उसको राजीनामा एन्ड देयर वाज लाइक सो मच ह्यापनिङ शान्ति प्रक्रिया अगाडि बढिरहँदा अनि त्यो किताब भर्खर आएको थियो अनि obviously त्यसले बजार तताएको थियो एकदमै हैन and they thought it would be great to have it in English and Nikunda was like do you want to do it I was like oh sure and I just did it and it was just how I started that and यति मोटो किताब थियो the fact त्यो अनि त्यो किताब लेख्ने चाहिँ फेरि किरण दाइ हुनुहुन्थ्यो किरण भण्डारी अनि उहाँले एकदम सजिलो तरिकाले लेख्नु भएको थियो उहाँ चाहिँ एकदमै साहित्यिक लेख्ने खाले पनि हुनुहुन्न सो उहाँको एकदम सिम्पल खाले थियो सो I was like just like okay fine के अनि त्यो बेला I was watching Game of Thrones भर्खर हैन त्यति बेला अनि त्यहाँ चाहिँ Game of Thrones मा my lord यसो भनिराख्छ नि त हैन हैन त्यसो अनि रुकमानर कटवाल बिकज अब ऊ आर्मी अनि राजाको परिवारसँग नजिक भएपछि उसले नि त्यस्तै क्या like the way he addresses the your majesty भनेर नेपालीमा भन्दाखेरि अनि मैले चाहिँ यो मेजेस्टी I was like my lord लेख्दिने जब अनि सबै काटिदियो एडिटरले your like I don't know so I did that अनि त्यही हो मैले सकाए ट्रान्सलेसन अनि त्यही हो त्यसपछि
And how was it received?
I don't know because I don't think people didn't even I don't know people realize किन एकदम छिटो आयो क्या त्यो किताब आएको कति पछि नेपाली आउने बित्तिकै इङ्ग्लिसमा आइहाल्यो सो बुक रिलिज भएकोसम्म मलाई याद छ त्यसपछि I don't know what happened तर I don't think धेरैजनाले पढ्यो अथवा थाहा भयो किनभने रुकमानको कटवालको लाइफमा इन्ट्रेस्ट हुने मान्छे प्रायः चाहिँ नेपाल नै हुन्छ नेपालीमै पढ्न गर्छ नेपालमा धेरै बिक्री भइसकेको थियो त्यो किताब आई थिङ्क द्याट वान अफ द बेस्ट सेलिङ बुक्स द्याट इयर अनि सबै नेपालीहरू नेपालमै पढिसकेको थियो इङ्ग्लिसमा कसले पढ्छ सो आई नेभर गट अ फिडब्याक हाउ इट वाज त्यो केही पनि थाहा भएन अनि जस्ट
plug it
Yeah,
Boju Bajai listeners.
this is a plug.
yeah Boju Bajai listeners if you want to find out about that chief of army it was like ex-chief of army it was quite an experience
We can buy this at Pilgrims.
I don't know kota paincha hola
But and talking about published books, another plug and Muna's translation of Sulachana Ji's poems was recently this year, Muna, published
February.
by Tilted Axis, like this fantastic independent small press based in the UK. It's like a chapbook of her poems from Raat, and it's a fantastic collection. And I believe, Muna, you're publishing a different version for the Nepali readership as well, right?
Yes. So, in fact, Itisha is involved in this. So thank you, Itisha.
We're just like
She's
plugging
been
our work.
a great reader. No, this is what it should be like.
Yeah.
It should just be like, hey, you go, girl, and you too, and you too. But yeah, no, really, thanks, Itisha, for rereading and working on those texts in a way, because you also know Nepali. So yeah, we're working on a Nepali version because त्यो अब जहाँ अब सानो च्यापबुक होइन अब कति 7 पाउन्ड रे युकेमा अब त्यहाँदेखि नेपाल आउँदा 1000 रुपियाँ हुन्छ अब 100 रुपियाँ त महँगो भन्ने there's no way 1000 रुपियाँमा यस्तो हेरेर यो फोटोकपी गरे हो भनेर किताबलाई there's no way अस्ति मलाई कसले भनेको थियो त्यो किताब यस्तो देख्यो होइन यो कस्तो बेलायतमा छाप्या जस्तो पनि छैन है because it's like stapled like like or whatever
stapler
so no way 1000 rupees ma उहाँले किन्नुहुन्छ so यही नेपाली रिडरशिपको लागि चाहिँ हामीले नेपाली र अंग्रेजी दुवै राखेर चाहिँ यो चाहिँ युकेमा चाहिँ 25 वटा मात्र अनुवाद गरिएको थियो अनि सुलोजी had written 60 poems त्यो कलेक्सनमा नेपालीमा चाहिँ अलिक बढी 30 वटा पोएम जति गरेर अब चाँडै छिट्टै नजिक तपाईको
नजिकको पसलमा छिटै उपलब्ध हुनेछ
Yes,
स्टुडेन्ट डिस्काउन्ट नमाग्नु होला
But yeah. So Prikuti and I talk about this a lot, Muna. I mean, I don't if you've heard some of our episodes from the past at the beginning. Especially for all three of us, we mix English and Nepali when we speak, And a lot of the times when we talk about certain things, whether it's, our romantic liaisons or intimacy or sort of desire, sexuality, ko kura gardaheri chai immediately we switch to English because we feel a lot more comfortable, speaking or those concepts sit much better with English jasto. I mean, when you're translating, and this is like, I suppose for all of us, and we can all talk about it, translating women from Nepali into English, what are sort of the really difficult parts? I mean, is it the concepts? Is it के भन्ने अब sentence structure? के सबभन्दा गाह्रो चाहिँ के लाग्छ?
So, should I talk in terms of the interview too, a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah, because म त्यो पनि सोचिरहेको थिएँ, because तिमीले त्यो क्वेसनहरू गर्दाखेरि कति कुराहरू I'm sure तिमीले त्यो ट्रान्सलेट गरेको छौ होइन? Like you keep saying people are so mean or people can be really mean.
People are horrible.
नेपालीमा भन्दाखेरि चाहिँ कसरी भन्छौ like
Yeah. So I'll just go step back. So ek duiwata kura. So this is very interesting. This is a good question because like for instance, they will say ani त्यसपछि मलाई कस्तो कस्तो लाग्यो. Right now I cannot write मलाई how लाग्यो. Okay, like I cannot translate. So then I have to put words, right? So मलाई त्यो पनि actually it's something we should talk about. Like I don't know how ethical that is, but at the same time it's how I'm perceiving and interpreting what her kosto kosto means.
So you tell her, यस्तो यस्तो भएको, and then she'll say yes or no, or उहाँले त्यसमा
I'll try, and then she tries to elaborate, and then sometimes I'm like, okay, I think this is what she means, and this sounds good with the story, and I'm just gonna write that. So for instance, let's talk about Maya Thakuri, you know? So at the end, I don't know if you remember, like we talked a lot about her father, and then she was saying she was really angry, and then she would be like, but then my mother would just let him in again, and then and I would wake up one morning and then see him like his feet, you know, like esto sutira esto khuta ochanबाट esto bahira niskya, and then I would go to the agan, and it's like she's bathing him, like you know,
that.
and I remember, and that scene in my head was so very sensual actually, and she was seeing it from a point of view of a little girl who's so angry at her dad, being like, why did you treat, like, you just run away, you drunkard, you have like million women, like, and you mistreat my, like, she's angry, right? And rightfully so. And then she's seeing her mom bathing her dad and touching his back and not understanding why this woman is doing that. And then Maya Thakuri is telling me she would do, and when she said it like really softly. And ama चाहिँ यस्तो बिस्तारै, like, you know, sabun लिएर, like she like sort of softened her tone, and then she's like, अनि अब अहिले आएर, like, I don't know, मैले बुझ्छु, like she just said that.
Okay.
You know, and then I interpreted that as like, of course, like, she misses touch. She misses touching. She misses being touched. And that is something, oh my God, in Nepal I don't even know where to start from with that, and that intimate touch that you desire, you know. So
and I think you did like a really good job, because you sort of talk about like maybe that was the only instance, or the only opportunity.
यो त्यो तिमीले जुन कुरा गर्नु, इट्स सो इन्ट्रेस्टिङ, बिकज तिमीले यो ट्रान्सलेटिङ दिस थिङ्स फ्रम नेपाली टु इङ्ग्लिस होइन, अनि मेरो अब त्यस्तो राम्रो पकड छैन जस्तो लाग्छ मलाई मेरो नेपालीको त्यस्तो, तर मैले रिसेन्टली आई टु ट्रान्सलेट दिस टेक्स्ट होइन, यो फेमिनिजमको बारेमा हाम्रो अडिजी दिदीको मैले टेक्स्ट ट्रान्सलेट गर्दैछु, वाइ वी सुड अल बी फेमिनिस्ट, एन्ड 15 सजेसन्स होइन, 15 त्यो म्यानिफेस्टो सो त्यहाँ कति कुराहरू छ भने, जस्तो अब अर्को कुरा यति साह्रो मैले पहिला पनि कुरा गरेको थिएँ, मैले त बोजू बोजू सुरु गर्नुको एउटा वान अफ द रिजन्स वाज अल्सो द्याट हाम्रो त्यो भाषा नै छैन जस्तो लाग्ने, वेन वी टक अबाउट थिङ्स लाइक जस्तो फेमिनिजमको कुरा गर्दा एकदम जार्गन हेभी, अनि हाम्रोमा जति छ सबै एकदम यो विकासे टर्महरू छ होइन. सो मलाई यो ट्रान्सलेट गर्दा पनि त्यस्तै भएको थियो क्या. अनि जस्तो सानो कुरा भनौँ न, इक्जाम्पलको लागि अब इङ्ग्लिसमा कति सजिलै आउँछ. सो फर इक्जाम्पल सेक्स क्यान बी अ ब्युटिफुल थिङ. अब टु ट्रान्सलेट द्याट सिम्पली एन्ड से एक्ज्याक्ट द्याट द थिङ इन नेपाली मलाई कति गाह्रो भएको थियो. सो आई हेभ लाइक अ फेसबुक ग्रुप. आई हेभ अ फेसबुक ग्रुप सो वेयर दे आर लाइक 3-4जनामा एकदम ट्यालेन्टेड फ्रेन्ड्सहरू छन् नेपाली इङ्ग्लिस गर्ने. अनि आई वुड जस्ट आस्क देम यसलाई कसरी गर्ने, यसलाई कसरी, सो दे वुड बी लाइक throw in a bunch of ideas अनि यौन एउटा सुन्दर कुनै के हुन सक्छ यसरी के ल्याए तर मेरो दिमागमा it still doesn't come त्यस्तो छिटो के त्यो इंग्लिशमा जसरी
it's even like translating I love you, right? म तिमीलाई माया गर्छु does not sound like I love you. I don't know, it is, but it is like I was trying to write a story and I had done an anonymous survey, sent an anonymous survey to all my friends. This is 2015, and I said and the title of the survey was "Let's Have Sex in Nepali," and then all my friends are like, "Bof, what is this?" And I was like, "Okay, I just am doing a survey." So I had asked them a series of questions like, "What are some of the words you use?" Like even I don't know, in the act, like or like to get things started, like what are the things you use? And it's so funny the things that came out. It was like "Gorono," like it's like very like very utilitarian. It's like and there weren't other के भन्छ words. Most of them are like "Gorono."
छैन नि त हैन हामीले सुनेकै छैन अब आई डोन्ट नो हाम्रो किताबहरुमा होला तर अब तिमी त यति धेरै यो फिमेल राइटर्सको पढिरहेछौ इफ दे टक अबाउट डिजायर्स हैव यु फाउन्ड a way कस्तो अब similar things
a code
or when they talk about their bodies because I think a lot of the women तिमीले at least यो Lightroom Conversation मा गरेको चाहिँ उनीहरुले पर्सनली पनि सफर गर्नु भएको हुनाले आफ्नो पर्सनल लस ट्रेजेडी त्यसको बारेमा कुरा गर्नुहुन्छ तर some of them अरु विषयमा कुरा गर्दाखेरि स्पेशली आफ्नो बारेमा कुरा गर्दा which has nothing to do with their suffering or which has to do with their dreams and aspirations desires त्यसमा चाहिँ कसरी लेख्नु
त्यस्तो एक्सप्लिसिट चाहिँ धेरै जनाले गर्नु हुँदैन there are a few I feel like would use certain like body parts and talk about तर त्यस्तो it's never like it's always like metaphoric
okay
I know which seems like a regular thing for people to do to want to do Ani, that's a good question because I don't know if I've encountered much desire. I've encountered a lot of anger.
Yeah.
And I've encountered a lot of like bidrohi, like I'm angry with the society, like someone give me something to throw at, you know, like testo khalko chai I feel like they've spoken up and against that. I think when you speak about desire, it's very metaphoric. It's like very like let's compare it to the moon. Like it becomes maybe poetic. I mean, what about you guys? Have you guys encountered other ways that women? I mean, Itisha, you're reading Nepali women too.
मैले पढेको किताबहरुमा चाहिँ एक त I think सुलोचना जी को रात again like Muna said, I know. As an extended metaphor or symbol, there are certain poems in Raat which I found to be very sensual. In the works of, for example, when I read Sirishko Fool by Parijat, you know, and the way the main like the female protagonist is described or bodily features or it was done like it was very obsessed with like her physical beauty from the male gaze okay so a lot of like her breasts, her sort of fair skin, a lot of text attributed to describing her breasts so then you realize like oh she's doing it through like the male gaze so ekdam त्यो direct representation or women who are actively writing about desire encounter but it's very difficult because most of the women writers that we have read about through Munako column they're married with children or they are so it's not something that I think women can still easily talk about jasto लाग्छ मलाई
no completely and it's like oh that's a whole other thing like whom you need to protect in order to write what you have to write, you know, and what you want to write. अनि अब हाम्रो जस्तो समाजमा त झनै like oh god त्यो त fiction भयो पनि it's like केलारो होइन उले गरे नै हो whatever भन्ने हुन्छ हैन तर तिमीले त्यो रातको remember we were talking about the poem Ananda Talao so like the word ananda right is actually a really good word that's very hard to translate into English like what how do you say ananda like it's like a very specific kind of
different
word
context
so she says you know I'll just read this प्रेमकै आँखाले हेर प्रेमको भोकी रातलाई तिम्रो स्पर्श पाए आनन्दको तलाउ बन्छ रात ईश्वर अवतरित हुन्छ त्यो पवित्र सरोवरमा ईश्वर सँगसँगै पौडिने तलाउ बन्छ रात. Right, so like this idea, the desire is like, again, it's very metaphoric, kind of, and has to do with raat, but then this idea of like prem नै भनिदिन्छ, which when you translate is love, and it's like not that interesting. And then but then this bhokiness, so I encounter a lot of thirst and insufficiency in sort of like, you know, like I want that khalko, like tar pura bha chaina khalko. So I think we encounter that. Tar त्यो I want this, and this is what my desire looks and feels like. I don't know. I haven't encountered it as much, or maybe I'm not paying careful attention. तर अस्ति अघि तिमीले त्यो प्रेमा शाहजीको पनि एउटा कथा सङ्ग्रह गुलाफ के अरे पहेँलो गुलाफ भन्नेमा she sort of describes how her husband is like very hungry for her body kind of, and then त्यो चाहिँ एउटा गुलाफको फुलमा एउटा के भन्छ झुसली किराले यस्तो चुसेको टोकेको लाइक त्यस्तो खालको चाहिँ शब्दहरू चाहिँ चलाएर चाहिँ I've seen that.
यो कुरामा एउटा सानो जोड्छु before we move on to the politics of space हैन. यो शान्ति चौधरीकोमा तिमीले गर्दाखेरि उहाँले एउटा लाइनमा भन्नुहुन्छ about how as a woman, as a Tharo woman, her body has always been sexualized हैन. उहाँले त्यसलाई कसरी भन्नुभयो होला के, किन इङ्ग्लिशमा पढ्दाखेरि त it's like okay that's sad, तर I think I've read about it. तर नेपालीमा त्यही कुरा, and then मैले तिम्रो जहिले पनि सोध्दा यो इन्टरभ्युजहरू पढ्दाखेरि it's not like these women have not been interviewed before. नेपालीमा पनि भएको छ होला, तर त्यो प्रश्न गर्ने तरिका र कसरी गरिन्छ, अब maybe there's not a woman there asking, or त्यो शान्तिजीले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ how did she talk about her body, whether it was, you know, like, because she said I might be old but still the way they look at a female Tharu's body doesn't change or something.
So that's really interesting. Another technique that I use is also I don't talk. Like once I ask the question or we were talking, and if they're like saying, I don't prod, I don't ask follow-up questions, I just look at them and I just quietly look at them. And then they continue, you know, and then they say more. So with that, she said, बुढेसकालमा पनि मेरो बुढेसकालमा आएर पनि म सुरक्षित छैन. She said that. But before that, she had said, यति पीडा भयो कि अब जुनसुकै ठाउँमा गए पनि अब त्यस्तै नजरले त हेर्ने हो. Like that, right? Or like उनीहरूले के खोजिरहेको छ अब त्यो त मलाई थाहा छ नि. Like so it's not like direct, but it's very much like, and it's also very much like, because I'm a woman, she's like, you know that khalko, like we're on the same page भन्ने खालको assumption a little bit चाहिँ राख्या हुन्छ. And then अनि मान्छेहरूले त भन्छ नि मलाई के भन्छ, तर she did use the word prostitute. अनि उहाँले नेपालीमै भन्नुभयो, तर इङ्ग्लिस उहाँको इङ्ग्लिस पनि राम्रो छ. And she said मलाई के भन्यो, मलाई prostitute भन्थ्यो, यस्तो त्यो चाहिँ उहाँले नै भन्नुभएको थियो होइन. So त्यो भने पछाडि then I could automatically like understand how people are perceiving her, because I'm also a woman in this society and I move in a certain way, and some people may perceive me just the way they perceive her, you know, doing certain things. So त्यो एउटा understanding भएर पनि हो कि maybe इङ्ग्लिसमा मलाई त्यो लेख्न अलिक सजिलो भएको, because I'm also putting myself a little bit into it, and I don't know how maybe a man would do it.
I mean, we have to talk about so we are saying like it's very difficult to encounter a desire, or very difficult to encounter the manifestation or sort of pursuing desire, you know. But I suppose we also have to acknowledge the fact that everything that we have read by women writers in writing in Nepali so far, Lightroom Conversations, every writer, there is so much violence that has marked their bodies. There is this entire history of violence against bodies of women, of queer women, of you know, individuals identifying as women, and it's very difficult maybe to like detach, like the positive space ma हामी पुगेकै छैन जस्तो पनि लाग्यो के. So we're not in that space where desire is comes without the baggage of violence and without the baggage of threat, you know. Maybe that's
कहिले काहीँ भन्नुहुन्छ मेल रिडर्सहरूले ओ सबै वुमेनको कस्तो लाइक तपाईँले सबै वुमेनहरूको कस्तो दुःख लाइक इट्स अल साउन्डिङ सेम भनेर एकजनाले भन्नुभएको थियो मलाई झन् कचेरी सुधार बिकज इट्स लाइक it's common and yet it's so specific too होइन it's sad that it's common but it is like you said super violent
अनि अर्को common thread चाहिँ was about how most of the women were talking about the space होइन अनि as writers उनीहरूले कसरी accommodate गर्छन् अथवा how do they find that space. A lot of them are married, living in joint families, have children. Like I think Sarita Tiwari होला when she said like I would rather trade my sleep and I'll do it मेरो बच्चाहरू सुधाएपछि and then I उसले लास्टमा जुन भन्छ नि that once my children grow up I'll just go somewhere and just write right अनि मैले यस्तो खाले यस्तो चाहिँ and then that actually reminded me of my dad. हामी सानो हुँदाखेरि अब दिक्क लाग्छ होला नि त त्यो बच्चा like I don't know उहाँलाई के अब एकदम he's not a writer or anything but just to have that त्यो आफ्नो space or like उहाँले भन्नुहुन्थ्यो क्या तिमीहरू ठुलो भएपछि म जोगी भएर जान्छु म जोगी बन्न जान्छु like I don't like all this भन्नुहुन्थ्यो and that reminded me of Sarita Tiwari about how she said अनि यसको बारेमा
or the fact that Shanti Chaudhary I mean she's like homeless basically.
Yeah, she's currently homeless and she's using public space actually like quiet libraries from 11 to 5 and whenever it closes for her own studies, for her writing, what have you. She is such an interesting woman. I just can watch her like forever. You should see her move in the public space. She moves like she's not there. Like she त्यो हाम्रो त्यो इन्टरभ्यू गर्दाखेरि अगाडि टेबल भरि पत्रिकाहरू थियो कि आर्काइभ त्यो लाइब्रेरीको पत्रिकाहरू अनि मैले यतिकै सार दिएको थिएँ अब फोटो खिच्नलाई अनि उहाँले चाहिँ सकेपछि उहाँले यसो टक फेरि राखिदिनु भयो कि उहाँ चाहिँ यस्तो युज टु छ अरूको स्पेसमा बस्न त्यो उहाँ आएर केही चेन्जेस नहोस् जसरी थियो त्यसरी नै छोडेर जाने चाहिँ उहाँको एकदम ठुलो लाइक आई फिल लाइक उहाँको त्यो सी एम्बडिज द्याट के त्यो उहाँ चल्दा फिर्दा नै त्यो she wants to leave no mark like it's so interesting to watch her do that and then not to mention उहाँले 65 वटा किताब पब्लिस गर्नुभएको छ होइन त्यो अधिकांश त्यो किताबहरू चाहिँ खास रिपोर्ट्स हो कि उहाँले सृजना विकास केन्द्र भन्ने चाहिँ महिलाहरूलाई अलिकता टेक्निक लाइक के अरे स्किल्स डेभलपमेन्टको लागि सुरु गर्नुभएको थियो अनि त्यसमा चाहिँ मेबी लाइक उहाँले अब ग्रान्टहरू आउँथ्यो होला के आउँथ्यो अनि त्यसलाई रिपोर्ट लेख्नु पर्यो होइन अब के को बारेमा होइन अनि त्यो रिपोर्ट अगाडि मजाले लेख्दिने अनि पछाडि कविता यति राखिदिने and it was so amazing and I was like oh girlfriend's hustling for space it's awesome she's created this great here's a report and here's some poetry related to alcoholism that we're talking about so it's so it's incredible like her poems to her were always had a lot of work to do okay? They were like we have to talk about this like about society it wasn't like just art for art's sake like it's like it had social responsibility the space funny is interesting
yeah that's such an interesting and maybe it's an interesting contradiction because in order for freedom you have to as a woman you have to make yourself invisible but then your visibility is attached to your work right so how do you reconcile like how do you move in public spaces where you're looking for pockets of freedom and you have to make yourself literally invisible but then what you're writing is all about visibility or at least when we consume it we see it as like a woman making a lot of important issues or themes visible from her point of view so your invisibility or visibility ko kura चाहिँ मलाई एकदमै interesting लाग्यो तर यस्तो पनि के so I obviously Muna has also worked like a little bit with Lalit in the past होइन अनि ललितमा कहिलेकाहीँ यस्तो ग्रुप मिटिङ्सहरू हुँदाखेरि अनि गफहरू सुनिन्थ्यो नि त होइन अब राइटर्सहरूको lives like happening lives हुन्छ नि अनि there's this famous writer I'm not going to name names there's this famous writer who has set up like this house in the countryside, अलि काठमाडौँ बाहिर होइन, एकदम शान्त वातावरण, farm house जस्तो के, अनि he invites other writers to come and like, so it's almost like a retreat, you know. So if a writer is working on something and if he's friends with that person, then he can go and like, you know, stay at this farmhouse and spend like a few weeks like working and stuff, you know. And I'm thinking, I wonder if like a woman writer has ever been invited to this space, or I wonder if like a woman writer can even accept an invitation for such a retreat, you know what I mean? So even that kind of a gendered environment that privileges the privileges of men is quite unfair, I think.
त्यो हामीले स्पेसहरुको पहिला नै we had like an entire episode about having a room of one's own. यो तर यो स्पेशली तिम्रो यो लाइटरूम कन्भर्सेसन पढ्दाखेरि everybody talks about space and उहाँहरुले कसरी मिलाउनु भयो. अनि बिनाजी, I think it was बिनाजी who says that उसको mother in law wanted to like बरु यो कोठा त भाडामा दिए पैसा आउँछ, अनि then she says यो पैसा कति लाग्ने हो त्यो त मै तिर्छु भनेपछि, and then that's the conversation ends there, हैन. अनि I wanted to ask you both, how did you feel about यो स्पेस? अब कति हामीले पढ्छ अरू एक्सपिरियन्सहरू, यसरी महिला नेपाली लेखिका अनि स्पेशली उहाँहरूले चाहिँ स्पेससँग जुझ्नु कसरी यो के भन्ने उहाँहरूले how they worked around whatever space they had or tried to build a space within their own home पनि यो तिमीले इन्टरभ्यू गर्दा अनि तिमीले पछि पढ्दाखेरि चाहिँ how did you feel about आफ्नो पनि journey with like space around where you write, how you feel when you're writing त्यो खाले? Did you guys think about it?
Yeah, of course. I thought about it. Space and time. I thought about space and time,
Yeah, I mean, like, you expect... So I live with my parents, I know. And they're amazing. They try to give me all the space that they can, I know. And it's great, and I don't fault them. But there is this idea of, like, oh, like, I still need to do certain things around the house. And, like, how do I then carve out that time and say, like, oh, I'm working. So, I've created a physical space to tala bariko choma, and I tell them, Lama tala goe hai, and then I go down, like you know. And that's sort of code of like, oh, she's working, and we won't. It's okay for a few hours. She's working. भन्ने त्यो verbally पनि express गर्नु पर्छ. न त especially घरबाट काम गर्ने मान्छेहरुलाई त ओहो एकदम धेरै मुना यस्तो हुन्छ, त्यो चाहिँ एकदमै हुन्छ. Yeah, I mean, how about you guys?
म त एक्लै बसे धेरै भइसक्यो हैन. सो मलाई चाहिँ त्यो यति प्रेसियस भइसक्यो मेरो आफ्नो स्पेस र आफ्नो टाइम. मलाई लाइक इभन इफ आई हेभ टु गो विजिट माई लाइक कजन्सहरू, आई हेभ टु मेक टाइम के मेरो काम छ, किनभने मैले ल्यापटप बोकेर जाउँला उनीहरू घरमा तर आई वन्ट बी एबल टु वर्क होइन त्यहाँ. अथवा मेरो पेरेन्ट्सहरू आउँदा पनि आई थिङ्क मेरो मम एटलिस्ट सी रियलाइजेस, मेरो बाबा मम्मी चाहिँ दे नो द्याट ओके इफ सी इज वर्किङ देन एन्ड देन वी आई क्यान अफोर्ड लाइक देयर बी सम वान एल्स डुइङ द्याट छ. तर त्यो नभएको खण्डमा त आइ एम अलवेज के गर्न मिल्छ मिल्दैन. तर यो पढ्दाखेरि चाहिँ आई वाज लाइक ओ माई गॉड, आई एम सो प्रिभिलेज, आई हेभ दिस होल स्पेस टु माई सेल्फ, I don't have to worry about these things. त्यो चाहिँ मलाई यो पढेपछि चाहिँ झन् मलाई चाहिँ एक किसिमको अर्कै ढुक्क भएको जस्तो लाग्यो कि that I'm able to afford this space and the time for myself.
Yeah. And for like, I also think about my own baujus who are in Pokhara and they live in big joint families. Even for women who are not writing. I mean, हाम्रो culture ma we don't really think we need privacy. You know, like bathroom is a good place. You know, but I always wonder like, wow, my baujus like sleep with the kids, or it's like they don't even really have a room with their husbands actually. It's like kids and the women khalko huncha ni. And then like I'm going to visit them this weekend in Pokhara, and I know that I'll just be in that space too, you know, like it's like so women share that space, and maybe like my two baujus who are sharing that space with the kids, like that's their private world that like maybe like the father-in-law won't enter that space. So in some ways it's like a space that they've created. So it's interesting to also think also, about that.
Just one more thing, I keep saying I won't talk about my boyfriend, तर यो स्पेसको कुरामा पनि यो कुरा के आउँछ भने उसले पनि when we have conversations about this, he tells me how उसको बहिनीको कोठा जुन चाहिँ is like living room को साइडमा, and when the cousins come over, it's given that the room is going to be with like उनीहरूको आन्टीहरू बस्ने अङ्कलहरू, and she has to move to the living room. They're like तर उसको कोठा because एक तला माथि पनि छ, nobody disturbs. Like nobody comes to like दुवैजना दाजु बहिनी घरमा छ तर बोलाउने बेलामा चाहिँ छोरालाई कम बोलाउने हो कि लाइक छोरी इज मोर एक्सेसिबल अथवा उसको स्पेस पनि उतिकै भ्याल्यु नगरेको जस्तो कुरा हामीले गराएको थियौँ जुन चाहिँ अहिले ठ्याक्क यो सब मिल्ने हुनाले मात्रै मैले बोलेको हो यो कुरा.
I mean, I want like यो स्पेसको कुरा गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ मलाई नेपाल भन्दा पनि मलाई यहाँ गाह्रो हुन्छ के बिकज माई मदर इज अ भेरी प्राइभेट पर्सन and she's very, for her space is very important, I know. So even she makes us feel like even we are encroaching in her space, okay? So that way, like, we have this very good understanding that, okay, my mother really respects hamro space and vice versa. Like, so for example, even if she has guests, I know, guests one day, like Maria and I were just living like 5 minutes away from my mother when we were in Nepal, you know. So we would go for dinner at her place every now and then. We would have dinner and chat for a bit, and then my mother would be like, okay, you can leave now. Like, would say directly, she'd be like, yeah, you can go now. Like, it's me time or pugyo.
That's amazing that she can vocalize that. Like, that's great. That's also creating space. I really believe in, like, when you put some desires into words, you are creating a boundary, you're creating a space, you're stating something. That's action, you know. That's great. We should all learn from your mother.
Yeah, definitely.
So your common thread ko kurama ta, obviously the clear one that we see is like, you know, as soon as the women are married, have kids, it's like no time for poetry भन्ने चाहिँ एकदमै आउँछ or लेख्ने time हैन. And your recent one, Panchu Kumarji, she actually quoted Sulochanako गृहिणीको कविता भन्ने.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? It's so beautiful. It's about like नानीको थाङ्नामा, what was it? घैँटोको पानीमा नानीको थाङ्नामा कविताहरू झुलझुल गरी जन्मिन्छ, right? So it's like that zulzul is so good. I don't know how to. I tried translating it and I stopped. I was like, I can't. Because it is like it's clearly there, you know, like it's there and you want to do it, but you don't have time. You just, but it's not like you've lost the skill or you've lost the desire to write. It's just the time spent writing, you're doing something else. And a lot of women say, well, I'm creating life now, or I'm creating a family and this is my creation.
Anita ji ko I remembered, like I so heartbreaking, like उहाँले लेख्ने and then she stops writing, no? And then she starts like उहाँले gardening is another way of.
Totally. I love Anita's. I love Anita's conversation was Anita Ji's conversation was one of my favorites, but it's I don't know if people have read that as much as others because her name is not as popular, you know. But this idea of even like, oh, Anita ji त पुरानो लेखक हुनुहुन्छ, उहाँहरु अब हराउनु भयो, like to whom is it हराउनु भयो? Like who has done the forgetting and who is she invisible from? Not her family. Not her garden, not her, you know, like, so how are we also seeing, like, उले उहाँले create गर्नु भएको कुराहरूलाई चाहिँ कसरी चाहिँ that she's not doing anything, you know, when you're not writing.
Yeah, because you used the phrase Nepal's collective literary memory in her interview, I know, like Nepal's collective literary memory has forgotten her, jasto. So who is like Nepal? Who contributes to Nepal's literary collective memory?
Yeah, totally. Well, like the man, I would say Anita Tulare, people booksellers wouldn't know that name. Like
plus उहाँको त्यो book पनि त्यो सानो खाले हुने रहेछ हैन, मलाई त्यो भन्दा अगाडि थाहा थिएन.
It's so beautiful. I really want that republished. It's so beautiful. Like
अहिले यो कतिवटा पुरानो नेपाली क्लासिकहरू चाहिँ रिपब्लिश भइरहेछ नि अलिकति राम्रो त्यो खाले. अब मैले एउटा हेरेँ त्यो बीपी को एउटा किताब हैन, यता पुरानो चाहिँ लाइक 70 रुपैयाँ कति अनि त्यो फ्यान्सी एकदम ग्लसी कस्तो हेर्दै चकलेटको कभर जस्तै देखिने, त्यो चाहिँ वाज लाइक 200 400 कति हैन. सो इफ वी कुड डु समथिङ लाइक दैट विथ दिस काइन्ड अफ बुक्स, बिकज आई डोन्ट नो तिम्रो रियाक्सन कस्तो पाउँछौ मान्छेहरूबाट यो कलमहरु लेखेपछि आर पिपल, do they get reactions and do they tell you, or how
you know it's so funny, like Kunda, when he approached me to write something for Nepali Times, I was like, well, I've been doing this interview and I really want a space for that so I could use it. And he was really interested, and I love that he was like on board right away. The only thing was like he was worried. He was saying, you know, I don't know if people will read it because आजकल attention span 2 minute को हुन्छ अब त्यो BuzzFeed जस्तो 10 things you need to do भन्ने खालको चाहिँ पढ्नुहुन्छ. Like how are you going to write something short? You write very long. And I sort of like looked at him and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna write it long and they're gonna read it. And then he was like, okay, like let's see, you know, he like totally humored me. And then अनि एक दुई महिनापछि उहाँले लेख्नुभयो, he's so cute, he goes like, oh my god, they are spending 6 minutes on your page. So maybe they're reading it. And then I was like, okay, they're reading most of it. Even if not all of it. So one, people are reading it. So people are sort of hungry for this long form. अर्को कुरा चाहिँ, whenever I looked at anthologies, I would find Parijat Goma, and then that's it with women, right? And then a few other women, but like I was like, certainly there must be other women, like, you know. And so I sort of did this column also to be like, I'm going to show you that we can never run out of women writers, like you know, like we can keep going forever, you know. And so so the reaction to that has also been very much like, oh, I didn't know that this person wrote. I didn't know that who this person. I didn't know this was the journey. Or मेरो पनि यस्तै भएको थियो. Or like, you know, that kind of reactions एकदमै पाउँछ. तर and not तर and at the same time, these are all seeds. Like in some ways, the writers expect me to translate all their work, which is like very heartbreaking because I can't and I don't have the time or the funds. Like if someone were like, here's some money, like let's do this, great. Like maybe I can carve out time, but it's been so hard. So I tell them, you know, I will definitely translate one poem, you know, or like one thing.
Do that
and I do that, like, you know, and but I do want people to translate it. So like like if I find I'm like, please translate this, like please, you know, like यो सुरुवात चाहिँ हुँदो रहेछ एउटा आशा जस्तो चाहिँ.
यो मैले तिम्रो पढ्दाखेरि नि म यो आउँदै पछि पनि पढ्ने र यो एपिसोडको लागि चाहिँ हामीले सबै एकैचोटि रिड गरेको. सो आई वाज क्राइङ बिहान मलाई किन एकदम मेरो मन म तोयाजीको पढ्दै आई वाज क्राइङ अलरेडी. एन्ड देन आधी सबै पढ्दा आई वाज लाइक बिहान वाइ एम आई क्राइङ, आई डोन्ट नो, बट इट्स सो हार्ट ब्रेकिङ. अनि मैले सोचिरहेको थिएँ अब उहाँको सबै कृतिहरू नेपालीमा छ होइन. अब तिमीले उहाँसँग इन्टरभ्यू नेपालीमा गर्छौ तर फेरि इङ्ग्लिसमा लेख्छौ. तर यदि यसलाई बिकज नेपाल टाइम्सको हिमाल छ, इफ देन बिकज नेपाल टाइम्स भन्ने त इङ्ग्लिस पढ्ने एउटा लिमिटेड क्राउड हुन्छ नि त. अब दोज पिपल आई डोन्ट नो इफ दे वुड बी कम्फर्टेबल इनफ or like be like, oh can I read those stuff. So यदि यही कुरालाई हिमालले if they republish it होइन तिमीले गराएछ महिनामा एकचोटि, आई एम स्योर देन त्यसपछि चाहिँ मेबी इन्ट्रेस्ट किन देन पब्लिसर्स वुड सी इट. अनि जस्तो अब मैले एउटा तोयाजीको यो पढेपछि आई वेन्ट रत्न पुस्तकमा उहाँको किताब छ कि छैन सोध्ने होइन, तर थिएन. अनि यदि त्यो नेपालीमा आयो भने एन्ड देन मोर पिपल विल टक अबाउट इट होइन, त्यो गर्न सक्यो भने मेबी द्याट वुड बी सो वन्डरफुल टु एक्चुली हियर वाट दे सेड. उनीहरूले उहाँहरूले भनेकै जस्तो सुन्न पाउनु अर्कै रमाइलो हुन्थ्यो होला. सो मेबी यु सुड try talking.
So I think you're like what, Bhavishyavani or something, because I have been approached by them actually.
That's great.
We had an interview. Interview. We had a meeting.
Oh my god, that was fantastic.
Then so I was kind of laughing because they were like, we want it in your form. And so I was like laughing because I was like, oh my god, I do the entire thing in Nepali, and then it's like, and then I do it in English, and then you like the English one, you translate it back to Nepali, like, you know. But they want to do it, and it's in the works, and now I think it'll be interesting. So I'm interested in seeing like Nepali ma kati impact huncha, what the writers are saying, because I feel like a lot of it is translated by me and my interpretation of it. So they are working on it. And then the other thing was like, we all agree that the people who should be reading these are the men who are in charge of creating this Nepali literary whatever canon, and they should read it, you know. Like they should totally
like the publishers देखि लिएर, like, you know, अहिले त नेपाल यो खाले अलिक हाम्रो त अब ट्विटरहरूमा पनि यस्तो खाले जहिले एभ्री मन्थ एभ्री विक यति म कुरा एभ्री स्याटरडे when there are more women writers or like about things about women, suddenly ट्विटरमा half of the day people are just discussing that and YouTube बारे conversation. So I'm sure Himalko readership is going to increase immensely after this.
I mean I hope so. But it does Englishमा लेख्यो भने चाहिँ अलिक हे इङ्ग्लिसमा भन्ने हुँदो रहेछ
धेरैले-
It's like
धेरैले-
अलिक भुर्रा types like it's like
ask me, I work for an
छोडिदिनुहोस्,
English
हुन्छ नि।
newspaper.
तर versus like you know नेपालीमा यो चाहिँ ठोसको काम हो like this is good
ठोसको yes
दुईटै ठोस काम हो, दुईटै भाषामा ठोस काम हो.
तर के अरे also I think it's a good like message to all the literary festivals एकदम अहिले नेपालमा एकदम literary festivals को चलिरहेछ हैन because a couple of years ago I mean we made a lot of fuss about a couple of literary festivals where like they didn't have any or maybe a single woman writer on panels like multiple panels हैन and a lot of the sort of talk on Twitter or on social media was always it relates to like भए पो राख्ने अथवा
हो एकदम
you know the सक्षम महिला conversation again
एकदम.
and it's so I think what Muna is doing is recuperating work the works that are already there but no one has paid attention to because they're women, they're self-published, you know, they're not like the hero type authors because now it's all like the icons are being created also, you know, literary icons who are very social media savvy and stuff. And, you know, women aren't as active on social media. Also, women are very bad at self-promotion, I think,
Oh
like
my
there's a lot
God,
of guilt involved.
I'm the changing that.
Oh my God, के भएको? It's, I mean, we're all in that, तर it is very, what's the word you just used? Not
Self-promotion.
No, you said they're very bad in self-promotion.
They're very bad at
Yeah.
self-promotion.
True. Yeah, Toya Gurung straight up was like, विमोचन होइन हल्ला नगर्ने. And also there's this idea of like, जुन राइटरले हल्ला गर्नुहुन्छ नि उहाँको
Seriously
त्यो हुँदैन भन्ने खालको चाहिँ त्यो छ त्यो एउटा अनि अर्को चाहिँ एकदम त्यो you know, I love the women writers whom I call, and they're like, and I'm like, so and so, म तपाईको अन्तर्वार्ताको blah blah blah, and then they're like, मेरो काम पढ्नु भएको छ. I'm like, okay, yes, like these are good questions, you know, and I'm like, मैले पढेछु तपाईको. अनि कस्तो लाग्यो त? And I'm like, okay, and then there are some women who tell me like, I think when you're interviewing me, you should use this angle. And then you should do this research on this. Like, you know, they're trying to tell me like, this is how I want to be seen, and you should
and that's so important,
that, you know. And I love that they're vocalizing that. And at the same time, I'm just like, all right, let's meet up, you know, like let's see how that goes. But self-promotion, that's one. And also there are, you know, I'll give away another secret. Oh my God, so many secrets. I'm naked.
We love it.
There is this amazing Nepali, I mean, उहाँ चाहिँ researcher जस्तो हुनुहुन्छ, I think, and I want to interview her too. Leela Luitel भन्ने अनि उहाँले चाहिँ, you know Leela Luitel? So उहाँले चाहिँ
I know, like she published this book on women's poetry, sort of like a history.
Yes, it's like my book. It's the two books. She has one महिला लेखक कथामा महिला लेखक or something, and then कवितामा महिला लेखक, like, you know. She's compiled this list for the whole world. Like, the literary folks don't have to go anywhere besides the books. Like, she's done the work for them. So don't tell me that there aren't enough. It is.
Yes, I tried to get hold of that book and it's out of print.
Yes, she's done the work. She's done the work. Like, these men who organize literary events should just buy the book.
That should be the reference book, the go-to book.
हामी अझै कुरा गर्छौं कि के गर्ने हो किनभने आई फिल लाइक एकदम मलाई एकदम रमाइलो लागिरहेछ अनि मैले भर्खर हेर्दै कि तिमीलाई एजरा क्लाइन भन्ने थाहा छ यो भक्सको केटा he does this podcast where he talks for 2 hours with another white man and I keep telling like if he can talk for 2 hours I should also like not feel like alikati bad कोही बेला हाम्रो podcast it goes beyond 30 minutes Itisha and I are always trying to keep it under 30 minutes. And I'm like, hey, Ezra Klein also does this. He talks for like 2 hours and only edits 5 minutes. So यो पनि episode त्यस्तै हुने वाला छ लामो episode.
It doesn't matter. We put it out like जति
put some झिकझ्याक music.
मुनाले 6 घण्टा spend गरेर interview लेख्छ हैन अब हामी मुनासँग कहिले बस्न पाउँछौं.
I want to talk about, you know, यो कुरा तिमीले भर्खर Ezra
Klein
like, you know, men's women. The other thing that a lot, and Leela Luitel पनि यो लेख्नुहुन्छ, a lot of the women I interview, they are categorized as feminist writers or writers
Yeah.
writing about women's issues. And I find that very interesting because it's like we never say like a male writer is writing about men's issues, even though all the protagonists are men.
Yeah.
They're all doing manly things. Like we're not like, oh, कस्तो male issues मा लेख्नुहुन्छ उहाँले त भटाभट male issues उहाँ त मेलिस्ट हुनुहुन्छ. We don't say that, you know. But it's I find that, and I always more like to intro like that एकदमै हिचकिचाउँछु म, like to say like she writes about women's issues because I don't know how, like I don't know, what do you guys think about that?
I think it's so trite, like it's so boring when people and I think a lot of men just use that as like an easy way to, you know, use brush strokes to describe like women's writing. Toro, you read and it's so diverse and it's so you know, it touches on so many themes, so many characters, etc. You women's issues, I feel like it's a reductionist approach and which is used by men strategically to kind of marginalize the writers.
त्यो चाहिँ मैले एज अ जर्नलिस्ट पनि फेस गर्छु. when I say like, oh, I'm a journalist, it's like, ए तपाईँ के महिलाको बारेमा लेख्नुहुन्छ? अनि एकचोटि त हाम्रो एउटा फ्यामिली फङ्सनमा एउटा अङ्कल just laughed when he said, oh, women's राइटको बारेमा त लेख्नुहुन्छ? I was like, yes, men's राइटको बारेमा लेख्छु म, सबैजनाको बारेमा लेख्छु.
No, and also अहिले यो conversation गर्दा पनि a lot of people like, oh, she writes about women writers, you know, like I'm already dubbed as that. And when I started the column, I wasn't really thinking women writers, but then I was like, oh my god, like why not? Like this is what I want to do, like, you know. But then it's interesting, like that is a label too, and
so I do want to talk about that just a little bit, if I may. Anthologies, I know when we like publish anthologies which feature women writers only, or you know, it's the women writers go focus women writers issues. I mean, there are already, I mean, in, you know, in the US, in the UK, like, you know, for a really long time, some writers refuse to be labeled as women writers. They refuse to be included in women only anthologies, I know, because they just want to be seen as a writer. Do you think like we can afford to do that yet in Nepal?
खै अस्ति एउटा लिटरेरी फेस्टिभलमा मैले आफूलाई इन्ट्रोड्युस गरेँ नि, म मुना के गर्नुहुन्छ भने म लेखक हो, ए तपाईँ लेखिका भनेर भन्नु. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that I had to say लेखिका भनेर, you know. So I don't know, I don't know if we to afford is a good question. Like, can we afford to not,
because we're still at that stage, right, where we're still kind of, even creating space or making our voices visible is such a political act, and we're still fighting for that. So in a way, these anthologies or your column or, you know, Hamru podcast, for example, is I suppose what we're doing is trying to create that space. But at the same time, you don't want that space to implicate you as being a lesser of a writer or as being just a gendered writer either. I don't know.
Also, it's very easily tokenized. You know? अब 10 जना male writer छ, एकजना महिलालाई बोलाऊ and we're done. We got the maila down, you know. त्यो पनि, that too is interesting. I don't know. I'm also, can I add to this question also, like queer writers too, you know, unless you like clearly out. I'm like, come on, whenever I'm reading these works of women, I'm reading with like all sorts of lenses, you know, and I'm reading with my queer lens. And this recent interview, I love so much, Banjo Kumariji's. I can't wait for you guys to listen to it, because we got to talk about like friendships between women, and that's always been an interest of mine in terms of even the stories I've been writing, and what I sort of term girlfriendhood, this kind of amorphous space where it's not just sisterhood. There's like a much deeper love, perhaps even physical, you know, and it's not as clear, the boundaries. And so we got just slightly little bit into that very softly and gently. But I'm also trying to read for those areas in their work, you know, because
Yeah.
who's out, who's not out. Like, I don't know, how do we, I don't know, like, त्यो कुरा पनि अर्को एउटा, it's a whole other thing, you know, like, I've heard queer writers say, like, it was necessary for them to write from the closet because that was safe, you know, or like coming out is a very Western thing. And there are other ways of sort of looking at that too. So even under women, because under women I also lump in queer, I think, writers, because anything that's not male, kind of cis male. So I'm also wondering that, and like, how openly can we also identify that, find those works? Like, I don't know. I don't have the answers, but I'm constantly searching.
एउटा कुरा पनि के, like, यो हाम्रो LGBTIQ community को understanding, or हामीले कसरी बुझेछ, how they are portrayed, how they are perceived in Nepali media, or, you know, what sort of content is coming out at the moment. We're like at very initial stages, so there's a lot of learning and unlearning to do, I think, for all of us as consumers and creators of content. I don't know.
And I think we have to keep searching. We can't just give up, you know, just like we had to search for women writers, like Lilaji had to look for women writers. Like, you need to put in that work, I think. Even for like Dalit women writers, like queer women writers, you know, like, and I mean, there are workshops for writers, LGBTQ writers, and all these stories have emerged. Like, sure, they don't have a book, but neither do I. Like, I don't know. Like, but I think those stories are there. I think we have to do a little bit more work. It has to.
I know. Like, we should mention like Breaking the Bracket. Maybe,
Breaking the Bracket
very quickly.
Definitely. Yeah. Do you, Itisha? Do you want to talk about?
No, you do it.
Were you a mentor too?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I don't want to misrepresent, but it's basically
true.
So Breaking the Bracket is a program that started last year through Word Warriors and QC. And QC. Beloved poet Yukta Bajacharya sort of worked with 10 writers, women, LGBTQ, queer community writers, and it was like it was basically, actually, it's interesting because it's giving them time and space to write their stories.
Right.
I know. And
then, I know that. Okay.
And then, so they're coming out with publication of the stories that were written during their residencies during that time, and then so we're excited for that. That's going to be great. And this year too, they're doing it, I think. So there are those spaces, I guess, that's exploring, you know, and I think the writers wrote both in Nepali and English. And then if it was in English, it's being translated into Nepali, and if it's in Nepali, it's being translated in English. The dubai चाहिँ हुँदैछ, हैन? I think that's the work. And then they were paired with more experienced writers, and then like could sort of workshop their works and stuff. So that was that was quite fun.
So अरु के बाँकी छ?
What some
के रे मैले के देखाएको छु भने धेरै जस्तो इङ्ग्लिसको किताबहरूको ट्रान्सलेसन नेपालीमा जुन हुन्छ नि, अहिलेसम्म धेरै जस्तो खाली मेल राइटर्स होला मात्रै ट्रान्सलेट गरेको छ नेपालीमा. So I think we should also look at like translating more women, non-binary writers who write in languages other than Nepali to translate into Nepali. So तिम्रो अदितिजीको translation आएपछि I think that will be awesome.
Oh my god, that was मैले अब कसरी सोचे भने when I was approached, I was like, can I do it? Can I like कसो हुन्छ? अनि यो गरिसकेपछि चाहिँ मलाई रियलाइज आई निड टु लाइक यु नो लाइक वर्क अ लट अन माई नेपाली अझै कति कुराहरू. तर कस्तो भने भाषाको कुरा मात्रै होइन, यो कन्सेप्टहरूको आइडियाहरू पनि क्या तिमीलाई नेपालीमा त्यो आइडिया हामीले सोचेकै हुँदैन. सो म र हाम्रो एडिटरले एकचोटि कुरा गर्दै थियौँ प्रवीण दाइ, टकिङ अबाउट हाउ इट वुड बेनिफिट अ लट अफ पिपल इफ वी ह्याड लाइक अ ग्लोसरी अफ अल दिस टर्म्स, स्पेसली हामीले राइट्स बेस्ड अप्रोचमा काम गर्ने मान्छेहरूको लागि चाहिँ होइन. त्यो अस्ति नै यहाँ प्राइड परेड भएको थियो नि, त्यति बेला पनि उहाँहरूले के गर्नु भएको थियो, अब जस्तो अब जेन्डर फ्लुइडिटी भनौँ इक्जाम्पल होइन, यो शब्द कोइन गर्न अब वेस्टमा अब कसरी आयो यो हाउ डिड दे कम अप विथ दिस टर्म अतिर नेपालीमा उल्था गर्दा कसरी के कुराहरूलाई चाहिँ लोकल कन्टेक्स्टलाई राखेर गर्न सकिन्छ बिकज इट वुड हेल्प अ लट अफ पिपल नट जस्ट एज राइटर्स बट इभन पिपल हु प्रोबब्ली माइट आर वर्किङ एज एक्टिभिस्ट एन्ड वुड निड टु गेट फन्ड्स अनि उहाँहरूको काम नेपालीमा छ भने उहाँहरूलाई त्यसलाई इङ्ग्लिसमा कसरी बुझाउने इङ्ग्लिसमा हुनुहुन्छ भने तपाईँहरू हाउ डु मुभ बियोन्ड अ सर्टेन ग्रुप to like talk about these ideas त्यसको लागि फेरि भाषा चाहिन्छ सो त्यो and also because the text I was translating was about feminism so यो कुरा चाहिँ मैले धेरै सोचिरहेको थिएँ कि hopefully अब केही समयमा maybe we can work together or maybe the publishers will actually do something about creating a correct glossary so I think that would be very super helpful.
Yeah, because I recently last year I spent a lot of last year reading Sharon Olds and and then she has like this poem and my the poem पढेपछि चाहिँ एकदमै हाँस उठ्यो कि I was like oh wow यो poem नेपालीमा translate गर्यो भने कस्तो हुन्छ होला like because she has a collection called odes हैन so it's like an ode to different objects different things different living things and there's one poem called ode to the penis so I was like oh wow यो नेपालीमा translate गर्दाखेरि कसरी लेखिन्छ होला जस्तो
you should totally translate it and then air it on this podcast like an attempt I don't know if you'll be crossing copyrights but you can just be like here's an attempt.
Educational purposes
gardening minds
okay,
anything else
यतिमै एन्ड गर्दा हुन्छ होला है
मुना कस्तो रमाइलो भयो तिमीसँग गफ गरेर थ्याङ्क यू सो मच
थ्याङ्क यू सो मच आई फिल सो अनर्ड I feel like कहाँबाट म आइपुगेँ यहाँ no thank you really and keep doing whatever you're doing because this is great this is a space you guys this is a space you've created a space I was telling my best friend like Tenzin like I was saying there's this podcast and it's like two friends just like talking to each other about all these issues which like I think friends in general do and you're just sort of putting it out there and also like I don't know giving privy to others to get into your world a little bit which is always like a privilege and also necessary in like so keep this is great so thank you for doing
and you too I mean you're doing such amazing work like you are also like making sort of the public lives of women writers that should be in the public space but has so far been in the private space you're bringing that out to the public space which again is so important and we laugh and we cry when we read your columns and and we're so excited about reading all of the women writers that you sort of reintroduce I suppose to Nepal so thank you for all of your work Muna
thank you very much thank you यति भन्दै हामी हाम्रो दुई शब्द यही टुङ्ग्याउन चाहन्छौँ र यो हाम्रो अगस्तमा रेकर्ड गरे पनि this episode will be out only in September and we have one more announcement is that September ko once this episode is out we will be going on a not short actually quite long puja vacation break because Losai is around the corner and we've not taken like a break as such I mean obviously I'm regular bhacha now we're making it a point that we do this every month but then also we want to take a break so we work on other things and among the other things would be a live event that we are working on hopefully Dasai Tihar Chhat पछि आउँछ होला so we'll let you guys know through our social media page that I handle. And
you're so good at it, Brikuti.
I know. I should put that on my CV, social media also, social media specialist. So we'll be doing that. So hopefully if that event goes well, we probably would like to do more live events. अनि हामी के सामानहरु पनि बेच्न थाल्छौं अब हैन ब्यागहरु हैन के बेच्न थाल्ने हाम्रो प्लान छ हैन so please किन्नु होला so we'll not be here for a while and yeah we might do other fun things also we'll let you know when those fun things happen अनि we'll see you
so
winter
after our break
after our break winter is coming
so after our break who knows we might even return as dollarwadi nariwads
yes I can't wait
what dollar what
no it's just a sort of a running joke where we keep making fun of like this whole development industry ko jargon,
okay,
how much backlash
yeah.
women get like for speaking out, they immediately like assign to yo the NGO ING ko paisa khara boleko bhanera, so that the whole thing. So yes, look forward to Boju Bajai live in November.
Yes, and then our episodes in December onwards again. Our Naya season. I'm so excited. I wanted to say this. New season of Boju Bajai will come. Due winter ma. Okay, so thank you so much. It was a long, interesting Ramailo Amro interview. Ekdam maja aayo. And if you've listened last summer, that means you are a true fan. You are a Zobra fan, and let us know if you are a Zobra fan by commenting.
Also, you're a true nerd if you've listened to this whole thing, maybe.
And buy all the books of all the women we've talked about.
Yes, and if you ever, this is also a thing, like if anyone out there wants to reach out to any of the women, like who are writing and want to do other different projects that you've sort of sparked, please contact them, contact Boju Bajai, whatever, we can put you in touch. Any future projects are always welcome. Yeah. And if you want to
translate, yes.
Okay.
If you're a translator, please come. And if you think you're not good, you are great.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yति भन्दै एकदमै
Pitora, I feel like we have to. Sorry, last mention.
Okay.
I feel like I have to mention Praveen Adhikari.
Oh yeah, he's my editor. Hello, he's my editor. Okay. Yeah.
Because Praveen Dai is like the champion of translation. He's always pushing people to translate. He's always like encouraging people to translate. So Praveen Dai.
Can I please say एउटा सानो story भन्नु Praveen Daiko?
And I'll also add Antimi story.
Okay.
I've also thanked him on the Tilted Axis chapbook because he was the one who was like pushing me to write back to Deborah and like get in on this, you know. So totally like we do need that external like push to
So Praveen Daiसँग यो अडिचीकोमा काम गर्दाखेरि I sent him the first one, and then he was like, and then त्यति बेला मैले realize गरेँ हामी यहाँ नेपाली इंग्लिश हिन्दी बोल्छौँ, and I keep joking saying like oh मेरो हिन्दी कति राम्रो छ, so I didn't realize translate गर्दा पनि मैले नेपालीको सबै हिन्दीमा translate गरिरहेको थिएँ कति कुराहरू क्या मर्दानगी and at one point मैले like something to do with cooking and men यसो के थियो, and then पाक कला यसो के थियो, अनि मैले त नि बावर्ची लेख्दैछु भान्सेको सट्टै प्रवीण दाइजलाई भ्रिकुटी त्यहाँ चाहिँ अलिक अति नै भयो भ्रिकुटी like how can you say बावर्ची you're translating in Nepali. I know you are a Bollywood fan, but this was a little too much. I was like,
too Bollywood.
Yeah, I was like, okay, thank you, sorry, I would not translate in Bollywood, I would translate in Nepali. So त्यही हो हाम्रो प्रवीण दाइको स्टोरी यही सकिन्छ र यति भन्दा भन्दै हाम्रो अब यो अब हाम्रो एकदम uplifting यस्तो नोटमा हामी will end our episode, and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Boju Bajai. Muna, please तिम्रो पनि भन्देऊ न सोशल मिडिया कता कता फलो गर्न सकिन्छ if you want to.
त्यस्तो भन्न पाइन्छ?
Of course.
We
have like massive reach.
Okay, so follow me. No, just kidding. I run Katha Satha. We try to do all things literary. So follow Katha Satha Nepal. If you want to be my friend and follow me on Instagram, I may or may not allow it. I'm Muna Tuna. And then on Twitter, Muna GRG, I think. Yeah, I think. You'll find me.
Okay,
I'm
go
around.
find Muna, go find all those books we talked about, and have fun. दसैँ तिहार राम्रो होस्, मजाले खानुस् पिउनुस्, एक्सर्साइज गर्नुस्, धेरै पटेकाहरू नपड्काउनुस्. Okay, bye.
Bye.
I wanted to take this moment to do something I've forgotten, which is to thank the brilliant, talented, and kind Sikuma Rai, who's been the photographer and videographer for Lightroom Conversation. Lightroom Conversation has been such a pleasant experience. A lot of it because of Sikuma and her very balanced and open and calm presence. Sikuma is off to bigger and better things, and I wish for her nothing but all the light and all the love. I'm going to miss you, Siku, but I know that I have to share your talents with everyone else. So keep your ears and eyes and all your senses open and ready for Sikuma as she takes the multimedia world in Kathmandu by storm. So thank you.